Hi folks, in this video I'm going to show you how to make use of both the symbol and the repeat function in Adobe Illustrator to save you hopefully some time in your everyday work. The example I'm going to show you is with engraving or laser engraving some coasters here. So as you can see, I've already turned these into symbols, and I've also turned them into a repeating pattern, and that makes it so much easier for me to position these coasters and to choose how many I would like to run off on the laser beside me here. So having this pattern function is really very useful to me, and hopefully that'll be of some use to you as well. So we'll dive in and we'll have a look first of all at how to create a symbol and the benefits of that, and then we'll have a look at the repeating patterns as well. So we've got a graphic here. It's got a little bit of a typo here, and that's deliberate in order to show you the benefits of symbols in the rest of the video. So I'm going to turn this into a symbol. Like most things in Illustrator, if you go to the window menu, you'll see all the tool sets that you may want to make use of, and I want to use symbols. I've already got symbols turned off, or on, sorry, but I'll just re-enable that. So window and symbols. And you can see there's a couple of symbols here already. For example, there's a symbol that represents the coasters, and I have another symbol too, which is going to be the cutting pattern or the cutting hole that is in the jig for the slate coasters. And you can see this is an example of a jig here. So this makes it much easier for me to place all of the coasters, the physical coasters, accurately without having to spend a long time manually trying to position the coasters by hand. And you can see that if I just zoom out again just to show you that pattern. So here is the pattern here is the jig, and as I say, that's the whole point of creating a pattern, just to make this whole process a little bit easier. So I've got my artwork, I've got the text and I've got the graphic, and I'm going to basically select both objects, both pieces of work, and I'm going to drag them straight to the symbols floating toolbar. I'll give it a name. We'll just call it CCEK logo. It's going to be a graphic, and I'm going to leave it as static. And now we have our symbol. It doesn't seem to have changed terribly much, but now you will see that the symbol is now listed here in the symbols toolbar, and I can take off as many copies of that symbol as I want to. Now, the reason, as I said, for making it a symbol is for editing. Okay, if I've got many copies of this symbol, which I often do, if I decide to make a change, I don't want to have to copy and paste that change over and over again, and symbols are a great way to do that. AutoCAD users would know this as a block. Okay, so I'm going to just double click on one of the instances of the symbol, and I've been warned that any changes I make to the symbol will propagate through all the other copies, and that's actually a good thing. This is what I want. So I'm going to accept that those changes will replicate. So say OK. I'll go to my piece of text, and I'm going to correct the typo there. I'll replace the D with an S, and then I'll just confirm that. I'll just go to the top left of my screen and just say, just going to exit, or I can right click as well and simply say exit, editing the symbol, and those changes will propagate through all your other instances of your symbol. So that's potentially a great time saver. It certainly is for me when I'm laser cutting and laser engraving objects. So we'll now just have a quick look at using the repeat function as well. Now, there's more than one version of the repeat. There's a circular pattern, there's a radial pattern, and there's another one as well which I can't quite remember, but I'm only going to show you how to use the radial, the grid pattern. That's the one that's most useful for this particular exercise, okay, to create these coasters. Okay, so now that I've got my symbol, which is dynamic and can update, I'm now going to turn it into a pattern, and as they call it in Illustrator, it's the repeat function, and not array, which is a common command in CAD programs, does much the same thing. But I'm going to go to object, and I'm going to use not pattern, which you might be tempted to select, but it's not a pattern, it's simply a repeat. And you can see here we've got radial, grid and mirror. So I'm going to use the grid option, and what I love about this function is that you can easily update the spacing between the objects. That's handy for me with the laser, and also the number of objects that appear on screen. So now you can see We have these grips that allow me to increase the number or the overall size, but we also have these handles at the centre, top centre, and to the left hand side as well. I can use these to randomly adjust or to whatever my desire is. I can change the spacing between individual elements by using these handles. And as you've seen at the start of the video, I can also use this to control the number of objects that are either laser cut or, in the case of the coasters, laser engraved. So here we've got a practical example of that. I'll run these coasters off on the laser just to let you see the end result as well. There's a slight problem with this because I wanted to make the best use of the available space, so I wasn't actually able to create a single grid for this, a single repeating pattern. As you'll see, it doesn't quite work. If I was to expand that and use a straightforward rectangular pattern, even if I squeeze the coasters together, there isn't quite enough room there for me to get 15 coasters onto this 600 by 300 millimeter piece of MDF or jig that I've made. Okay, so what I had to do for that was I had to compromise, and I've actually created 3 patterns or 3 grid repeats that allow me to at least print off at most 14 coasters on that jig, rather than the 15 that I just couldn't quite manage to get 15 on it. Okay, so I had to change the positioning so that these would fit in the gaps in between the row above and below. I'm ready now to print, or rather engrave, these coasters. But what I like about the Epilog software is it works very much like printing to a regular printer. So if I go to File and Print, you'll see the usual dialog box you'd expect to find in most graphics applications. I've chosen the Epilog engraver as the printer, and I've already specified the size of the MDF jig that I've created, 600 by 300 millimeters, and I've got a little preview here as well. So I'm going to print the job to the laser, and we'll have a look at the print manager next. So here I am in the Epilog job manager. Just a couple of things to point out. Before I print these off, you can see that I've placed the physical jig in position. I've already cut that, so I don't need to make use of the red layer at all that came through from Illustrator. I'll simply turn that process off. It's vector-based, so that's the cutting process. I'll turn that off. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that because this is a text-based graphic, you can see here it's based on the world-famous Turnux tea cakes. So there's a lot of text there. So to get maximum legibility, I'm going to choose a preset, an engraving preset, which has got a lot of detail. So I don't have a preset for slate specifically, but I find that the preset for marble works quite well. I'm going to choose text engraving because that's going to engrave at a higher DPI. And you can see as part of the process, that is going to engrave at 500 DPI. I don't need dithering in this case because 500 DPI is quite fine detail. If I was going to engrave something at 300 DPI, I might choose to use dithering to try and kind of hide or disguise any of the tiny engraving dots, but that's not really required here. So I'm going to click on print, and then we'll go and have a look at what happens in the Epilog laser. Hopefully that's of some use to you. So that's symbols and the repeat function. Great ways to save you a lot of time, hopefully. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.